Hello and welcome to the final video of Section 4, installing a security server, which will allow external access for our end users. The security server is another instance of the connection server and is going to be installed on the virtual machine with a host name HZN-SEC that was built at the start of this course. Don't forget, this machine should not be joined to the domain. Also, don't forget that a security server has a one-to-one relationship with a connection server. If you wish to roll out a number of security servers, you will need to have multiple view connection servers for it to pair with. It is also recommended that you have dedicated external view connection servers ready to pair with your security servers and separate view connection servers for internal connections. This will allow you to specify which users can access desktops from outside the organisation by using the tag functionality. So what are we going to learn in this video? In this video, we're going to start by discussing the requirements for the security server. The next step is to prepare the view connection server for the installation. Basically, we need to configure a password that will be used for the pairing process. Finally, we will install the security server software. As the security server is again another role of the connection server, then it's no surprise that it needs to be built with the following configuration. It will need to be running either Windows Server 2008, 2012 or 2016, have 4 virtual CPUs, a 1 gig network card, 10 gig of RAM, and 60 gig of disk space. Again, this machine was pre-built during the installation and setup part of this course back at the beginning. So before we actually install the security server software, we need to go and create our pairing password. So as we said, this is the password that allows us to install the security server and pair it with a connection server. So to do this, we've logged on to our Horizon Administrator console. And then from the inventory section on the left-hand side, we will expand the option for view configuration. And then we need to select the option for servers. So now we see our different server roles within our Horizon environment. So we, by default, start with the vCenter servers. You can see that we don't have any security servers yet. That's what we're going to add. So what we need to do is pick a connection server that we will pair this particular security server with. So we've already got our first connection server. That's our main master. Then we've got our replica server, which is essentially a copy of the first connection server. So we're actually going to pair the security server with our machine here, HZN7CS2. So our replica server or our second connection server. So that will be then used for external connections. So perhaps internally people connect to CS1 and externally people connect to CS2. So we need to set up this password. So we're going to highlight our CS2 machine, and then we're going to click on the down arrow for more commands, and then we have the option to specify security server pairing password. So we'll select that option. Now we see the screen here to specify the password. It tells us all about the password, that it's a one-time password, etc. And we also need to make sure about firewall policies, IPsec rules. So once you're happy you've read that, so we can now create the pairing password. Then we need to tab down and confirm that password, so we need to type it in again. So there's our password again. And then we have a timeout field here. So we can change the timeout field to hours and then change that, or leave it as minutes. So we could say just up that to 1 hour. Don't leave it too long, because obviously you will need to install the security server quite quickly, otherwise people might find out the password. So once you've done that, we click OK. And now the connection server CS2 is ready for us to go and install the security server, which we will do now. So now we have opened a console to the server that's going to be running our security server role. So this is another Windows Server machine. You can see here, that's our Windows Server that's all set up ready for our security server role to be installed. So to install the security server, we've gone to our shared folder, happens to be on our domain controller, the software folder, and now we need to find the Horizon connection server x86_64. That's our security server install. It's actually the same installer that we use for the connection server, the replica server, and security and enrollment servers, as it's just another role of the security server. So we're prepared to launch connection server installation. Just minimize that in the background. So we'll just wait for that to launch. So now we see a familiar box. Welcome to the installation wizard for the VMware Horizon 7 connection server. So we click next to continue. Then we see the end user license agreement. So we need to click the radio button to accept the terms of the license agreement. Next to continue. Where are we installing? So we're installing into program files, VMware, VMware View, and server. We could change that if you want to, but we shall leave that as the default in this example. Click next to continue. And now we see our installation options. So as we've seen before, we need to select the type of connection server instance that we want to install. So here's our options. And in this particular example, we're going to just go for the security server. You'll see HTML access disappears because that will be handled by the connection server. We also have what IP protocol version we should specify. So remember, we can't mix and match IP versions between our Horizon components. So as the rest of our lab environment is using IP version 4, we will need to select IP version 4 for this particular machine. When you're happy you've selected the correct options, we go next for continue. So that's now going to start the configuration. So now it's going to ask for the server to which we are going to pair with. So this was our replica server. So we need to type in here the address of that particular server. So that was hzn7-cs2.pvolab.com. We could also put the IP address in if you want to. So we click next to continue. So that's going to go away and communicate with our replica server, and then come back and ask for the pairing password. So we type in the pairing password. So there's the password, and then next to continue. It does actually remind you there, if you haven't set the password, how to go back and complete that step. Otherwise, you won't get beyond this part of the configuration. So now we have the URL section of the security server configuration. So this is what end users will type into their Horizon client to access their desktop pools and their virtual desktop machines. So first of all, we have the external URL, so an HTTPS, and then it's the name of the server, and then we're connecting on port 443. What you might want to do there is, obviously, that's not a very friendly thing for users to remember. You probably have to write it down. Don't really want people to write it down. So the recommendation is to make that a friendly name so that users can type that in quite happily. You could always use the shortcut pool icon on the desktop, so they don't need to remember all of this. Then the PC over IP external port, or URL. So this is our IP address of this particular server. And as it's PC over IP, then we are connecting on port 4172. Then for Blast, same again. So this is connecting over our HTML client, HTTPS, the name of the security server, and then port 8443. Again, with this, we might want to change that to make it a more user-friendly name. So something they remember, like my desktop or something similar. So once you're happy with that, we're going to leave these as defaults. We click next to continue. The next option is to configure the firewall. So do we want to do this automatically or not configure it? So configuring automatically will go away and ensure that all the correct ports are open. So for example, 4172, if we're using PC over IP to connect, then our 443 for HTTPS, etc. So that will go away and configure that for us. Next to continue. And now we're ready to install the program. So as we know, it's going to be installed in this particular location. So if you're happy with the options you have selected, we can go for install. If not, you can always go back and change some options. So we're okay for this, so we'll go for install. And now the connection server with the security server role will be installed. So it's going to copy the new files over. Then we'll start to see some of the services be copied. The services will start, and then we will have our security server. So starting services, remove the backup files, and then we're done. So installer completed. There is a next steps here. If you check the box, it will show the documentation when you hit finish. We don't want to read the documentation at this stage. If you do, then clearly tick the box. So we'll click on Finish, and that's the security server installation finished. One thing to note, there's no icon placed on the desktop here, as was done with the replica server and the connection server. We don't need to launch the console from here. But if we want to check that the security server role is running, then literally open up a services box. So just by typing services in there, services.msc, go to the services screen, and then if you scroll down, we'll see here our Horizon 7 security server. It's running, it's automatic, it's going to be loaded on boot, and then our PC over IP secure gateway and all the other components all up and running. So the next task is just to go and check in the View Administrator console. So now we've switched back to our Horizon View Administrator console. So this is where we left it when we created the password, the pairing password for the security server. So now if we click on the Security Servers tab, we'll see that that machine has now been added. So that was the name of the machine, if you remember, which version of Horizon we've installed. We've installed the PC over IP secure gateway, and it's paired with our HZN CS2 machine. We could edit the details here. So if you want to go in and edit the external URL, and it actually gives you an example there of a more friendly URL, you can go back in and change those there. And also if we go to more commands, we can actually prepare for upgrade or reinstallation. So that completes our installation of our security server. That now completes section 4, and you should now have the core Horizon components ready installed and configured. In the next section, we're going to turn our attention to the virtual desktop machines and build, configure and optimize our first virtual desktop machine image.